Long Island medium Theresa Caputo's ex-husband, Larry Caputo, hospitalized with serious injuries. Larry Caputo, the ex-husband of Long Island medium star Theresa Caputo, was seriously injured after falling down a flight of stairs. He broke his leg in the accident and is currently being treated in the hospital. However, Theresa Caputo has not yet visited Larry in the hospital. According to a close source, Theresa has made this decision because Larry has betrayed her in the past. Since this incident, Theresa has severed all ties with their relationship and is not even looking for any personal information. Larry's family members are at the hospital to get detailed updates on his condition, but Theresa's absence has exposed the deep rifts in their relationship. Larry Caputo groaned as he tried to shift in his hospital bed. The pain in his leg was unbearable, a harsh reminder of the accident that had landed him there. The cold, sterile walls of the hospital room did little to comfort him, and the rhythmic beeping of the monitors felt like an endless taunt. His son, Larry Jr., sat beside him, scrolling through his phone. Every few minutes, he would glance at his father and sigh, as if contemplating whether to say something. Finally, he cleared his throat. "She's not coming, Dad." Larry closed his eyes. He didn't need to ask who she was. Theresa. His ex-wife, the woman he had spent decades with, the mother of his children, the one he had hurt too many times. "I figured," Larry mumbled, though the ache in his chest had nothing to do with his injuries. "She probably doesn't care anymore." Larry Jr. hesitated before speaking. "It's not that she doesn't care, she hasn't forgiven you." Larry let out a bitter chuckle. "Yeah, well, I can't blame her." As the night stretched on, Larry found himself drifting into memories. Theresa laughing in their kitchen, their family trips to the beach, the way she used to touch his arm absent-mindedly when they sat together. But then came the arguments, the betrayals, the moment she finally walked away. Now, lying in that hospital bed, he realized the worst pain wasn't his broken leg. It was knowing that some wounds never healed, no matter how much time passed. And some chapters remained unfinished forever. However, Jessica sat in the waiting area of a small event hall, nervously tapping her fingers on her lap. She had always been skeptical of mediums, but after losing her boyfriend, Ethan, in a tragic car accident 6 months ago, she was desperate for any sign that he was still with her. When Theresa Caputo walked into the room, her signature blonde hair and warm smile instantly made Jessica feel a little more at ease. "Sweetheart," Theresa said, tilting her head, "I'm getting a young man here, and he's coming through very strongly. He keeps saying your name, Jessica, Jessica. Does that make sense?" Jessica's breath hitched and she nodded, tears already forming in her eyes. "He's showing me a car, a terrible accident, but he wants you to know it wasn't painful for him. It was quick. He's saying he didn't suffer." Jessica let out a shaky sob. "That was Ethan, my Ethan." Theresa smiled gently. "He's showing me a necklace. Something with his initials or a piece of him that you wear?" Jessica reached for the small locket around her neck and held it up. Inside was a tiny photo of Ethan and a piece of his favorite hoodie. "I wear it every day," she whispered. Theresa nodded. "He knows, honey. He says you hold it when you talk to him at night. And he hears you. He's saying, 'Jess, I never left you. I'm right there, baby. Always.' Does that sound like him?" Jessica broke down, covering her mouth. "That's exactly what he used to call me. Baby." Theresa's expression softened. "He wants you to stop feeling guilty. He's saying, 'Tell Jess it wasn't her fault.' Did you blame yourself?" Jessica nodded, sobbing harder. "I begged him to come over that night. If I hadn't, he wouldn't have been driving in the storm. He would still be here." Theresa shook her head. "Ethan says, 'No, baby, it was my time. You didn't do anything wrong. You gave me the best years of my life. Don't waste yours in pain.'" Jessica clutched the locket tightly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since the accident, she felt a little lighter. Theresa reached out, squeezing her hand. "Sweetheart, he's always with you. He's sending you so much love, and he wants you to live. For him, for yourself." Jessica wiped her tears and nodded. "Thank you, both of you." As she left the session, a gentle breeze brushed against her cheek, and for the first time in 6 months, she smiled, because she knew Ethan was still with her. However, Theresa Caputo had seen it all: tears, laughter, shock, and closure. But today, she was about to meet a group of legendary spirits she never expected. The doorbell rang, and in walked the sitcom legends: Lucille Ball, John Ritter, Betty White, and Robin Williams. Well, not them physically, of course, but their spirits, drawn to Theresa's unique ability to connect with the other side. As she adjusted her signature big blonde hair and took a deep breath, she felt a sudden rush of energy. "Oh my God, they're here. I can feel them," she exclaimed. Lucille Ball's spirit was the first to come through. "Honey, you've got some explaining to do." Theresa chuckled, hearing Lucy's iconic voice in her mind. "Lucy wants to say she's still making people laugh up there," Theresa relayed to the air. "She says the afterlife has a comedy club, and Deezy still complains about her schemes." John Ritter's presence was warm and comforting. "I feel a man who left suddenly," Theresa said, holding her chest. "He wants his family to know he's still watching over them." A ghostly chuckle filled the room, and he says he still trips over furniture, even in the afterlife. Betty White's spirit radiated joy. She's saying, "Sweetheart, I'm still the life of the party up here." Theresa laughed, and she wants the world to know, yes, she was older than sliced bread, and she's proud of it. Then the room shifted. A whirlwind of energy swirled around, and suddenly, Robin Williams made his grand entrance. Theresa gasped. "Oh wow, this is powerful," he's saying. "Comedy is the bridge between sorrow and joy. Keep laughing, kid." A tear rolled down her cheek, and he wants everyone to know he's at peace. By the end of the session, Theresa sat back, emotionally drained but grateful. "I just had the greatest comedy show of my life," she whispered. As the spirits faded, she heard one last voice, Betty White's. "Tell Ryan Reynolds I still adore him." Theresa burst into laughter. Even in the afterlife, sitcom legends never stopped being legends. However, Theresa Caputo sat in her dimly lit living room, staring at the flickering candle in front of her. The air was thick with silence, interrupted only by the occasional creak of the old house. She had spent years channeling spirits for others, but now her own family's past haunted her in ways she never imagined. It all started 6 months ago when her daughter Victoria decided to separate from her husband. The divorce had been messy, filled with accusations and bitter fights. Victoria, once vibrant and full of life, had become withdrawn, struggling to balance motherhood and the constant media attention. As if that wasn't enough, Theresa's ex-husband, Larry, had fallen into deep trouble. He had lost his business, was drowning in debt, and had been caught in an illicit affair that shattered the remnants of their already fragile relationship. Theresa had tried to help, but the man she once loved had spiraled too far. Then, tragedy struck like a relentless storm. A fire engulfed Victoria's home, leaving her and her children with nothing but ashes. The investigation pointed to an electrical fault, but deep inside, Theresa couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. And just when she thought things couldn't get worse, her son, Larry Jr., was arrested on charges of financial fraud. He had taken out massive loans, unable to repay them, and the authorities had finally caught up with him. Theresa, heartbroken and ashamed, had refused to bail him out. Now, sitting alone, she reflected on the weight of it all. The once close-knit Caputo family was in shambles. Her gift of connecting with the beyond had always been her strength, yet for the first time she felt powerless. As the candle flickered one last time before going out, a cold chill ran down her spine. A whisper, soft yet unmistakable, filled the room. "Theresa, you're not alone." Tears welled in her eyes, Maybe, just maybe, the spirits had one last message for her. However, Theresa Caputo had always been able to communicate with the dead, but she never expected a vengeful spirit to take over her emotions. It all started when she visited an old farm in upstate New York for a private reading. The land had been abandoned for decades, its crops long dead, but the owner, an elderly woman named Margaret, insisted something still lingered there. As soon as Theresa stepped onto the dry, cracked soil, a wave of sorrow crashed over her. She felt an unbearable grief, as if she were mourning the loss of something dear. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, and whispers echoed in the wind. "This land was alive once," Margaret said, her voice trembling, "but it was cursed. The crops failed, the animals died, and everyone who worked here suffered. I need to know why." Theresa closed her eyes, opening herself to the energies around her. Suddenly, a violent force surged through her body. Her heart pounded, her breath quickened, and she felt rage bubbling inside her, a rage that wasn't hers. She gasped, clutching her chest. Her mind filled with visions of endless golden fields, thriving crops, and then destruction. Flames consumed the farm, screams of workers echoed, and the soil turned black as if poisoned. A deep, sorrowful voice spoke through her. "They took everything from me. They let me die." Theresa's eyes snapped open. She wasn't herself anymore. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't hers to cry. She turned to Margaret, her voice distorted, filled with pain. "You abandoned me. You let them steal my life. Now I rot, just like the land." Margaret gasped, stepping back. Who are you?" Theresa felt her body trembling, her hands clenched into fists. The spirit had taken hold of her, refusing to let go. It was the soul of a farmer, a man who had once nurtured this land, only to be betrayed and left to die when his crops failed. His grief, his anger, had soaked into the soil, poisoning it for generations. Margaret fell to her knees. "I didn't know. I didn't mean for this to happen." Theresa fought to regain control, her breath ragged. She reached deep into herself, pulling her energy back, trying to separate from the spirit. "You must let go," she pleaded. "You don't have to suffer anymore." The wind howled, the trees shuddered, and then silence. The crushing weight in Theresa's chest lifted, the sorrow faded, and the spirit released her. She gasped for air, collapsing to the ground. Margaret wept, whispering apologies to the air. And for the first time in decades, a soft rain began to fall, soaking into the dry, cursed land. The spirit was gone. But Theresa knew, some places never forget. Hello lovely viewers, welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.